Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unpontificated. My name is Vuyo, and today we're going to look in on or listen in on a couple of discussions. One is on the hub with Rudyard Griffiths and Sean Spear, and then the other one is with our favorite pundit, no, favorite commentator on CBC, Power and Politics, with this Mr. Cochran, and we'll take a listen in on that discussion there as well. They're discussing the week that was with Mark Carney, and Pierre Poilievre, Elizabeth May, and all discussions. I don't know. We'll see what they're talking about. Personally, I mean, Mark Carney has had a busy week. He's been in the States. He had the MOU that he signed, that was a couple of weeks ago, with Danielle Smith, and the fallout from there. And then, of course, the pomp and circumstance with the FIFA draw. I think Canada drew actually in a very favorable draw pool. And now I'm also South African, so I like what South Africa is as well. I'll be cheering for those two teams in the FIFA Cup. I was born in England, so I've always cheered for England, place of my birth. Then I've always cheered for African countries. Whichever country from Africa was there, they moved in with, hey, go Africa, viva Africa. But I've been in Canada for over 40 years. I'm Canadian, so obviously I'm going to be cheering for Canada. So you'll see me lifting the flag for Canada and for South Africa. Cool. All right. But for now, that was a nice little gathering there with the Mexican leader and Trump and our guy, Mark Carney. He looked good. Actually, one thing about Mark Carney, he looks good or comfortable. Let me just say, he looks comfortable amongst world leaders. I mean, this is his thing. He's traveled amongst the richest and the elitist, so he's comfortable there, And it's quite a contrast I see from Trudeau. Trudeau was forcing himself to look comfortable. He was kind of awkward, as far as I'm concerned. So Carney is definitely a step up, comfortable, at ease. That's his thing. So I don't know. That's just the way I see it. He certainly didn't have the bar that he had to raise is certainly so low with Trudeau. And that guy, I don't know. I think history will put Trudeau in certainly one of our worst prime ministers. He's just got to. And anyway, so let's listen to Mr. Rudyard Griffiths of the Monk Debates, Mr. Sean Spear. See what they got to say, what they're talking about.
But let's talk about Mark Carney first, because we hypothesized, Sean, out of the pipeline MOU with Alberta that this prime minister had some serious mojo happening. You've been with our Hub Politics panel, our other great podcast that you could access on our YouTube channel or in our podcast feed. And it seems like David Coletto, our kind of de facto resident pollster, seems to support what our spidey sense was picking up last week, which is the moderate middle is a rich and fertile ground to find political support in. And boy, the prime minister is planting stakes, putting down signs, roping off territory, and seems to be capturing a lot of public support at the same time.
Yeah, Rudyard is correct. I think the MOU was certainly a beginning. We don't know if this pipeline will ever get built, right? But Justin Trudeau would never have signed this MOU. Justin Trudeau was quite serious about keeping resources in the ground as much as possible. I mean, the tanker ban is just about not getting our stuff out to the Asian markets, at least not easily. So at least we have here an MOU signed and a chance that the tanker ban may be repealed. Again, we don't know. Right now it's just talk. But the fact that Carney signed this thing with Danielle Smith, got Guilbeault quit, so he obviously thinks it's quite serious. Elizabeth May said that she's never going to sign with the or side with the Liberals again on a vote, so she thinks it's serious. So it was a serious move, and it's definitely a start. David Eby got, and some of the First Nations got themselves in arms because they weren't at the table. So I think it's a good start, and it's where we got to begin. I'm going to give Carney some marks for getting it signed, and that's good. I think that's good. Give that to him. But again, we don't know. We need we need some private money. So still some things to get going. But it's a start. And I think a lot of Canadians think that as well. If you look at this Abacus data here, this is initial reactions post MOU to the idea of building a new pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast are modestly supportive. Nationally, 55% said they either strongly or somewhat support the idea, while 18% are opposed. That's pretty low. Strong support was higher in Alberta, 74%, of course, and among Conservative voters, 72%, and significantly lower in Quebec and among NDP voters. Why are people against progress? Why are people against, the NDP? This is going to create jobs, especially even for the First Nations people, increase wealth, might increase our own GDP for your social programs, NDP. In British Columbia, 53% support it. So most of people support it, while 30% oppose it. But more importantly, among those who would vote for the BC NDP, 37% support it. Of course, NDP. While 47% oppose it, demonstrating a sharp fault running right through David Eby's voting coalition. Among BC's Conservative supporters, 76% support a pipeline, compared to 11%. In Alberta, 92% of UCP supporters approve of the pipeline, compared to 53% of Alberta NDP supporters. So even the NDP in Alberta support it, of course, 92% of UCP. Surprising that Danielle Smith got booed at the last UCP meeting, but people support the pipeline. Right? It is important to note the support for the idea of a pipeline to the West Coast found more support than opposition in every region of the country. Among those aware of the MOU, 66% support a pipeline, 19% opposed. Most people are for a pipeline. So this is kind of what these guys are talking about, saying that Carney has got some mojo going, because most people support the signing of this MOU.
Yeah, as you say, Rudyard, in the immediate aftermath of the MOU announcement alongside Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, I think there was a sense that the politics for both the Prime Minister and the Premier were favorable, but then there were a couple of moments where that seemed less reliable. Stephen Guilbeault's resignation from the Carney cabinet, followed by the jeers that the Premier faced at the UCP annual general meeting, and one started to wonder, maybe we had misread things. Maybe this might be their undoing, that it exposed these weaknesses they both have on their respective left and right flanks. And so I've been really grateful for David Coletto's research from Abacus Data in recent days that shows that notwithstanding some grumblings on Carney's left and Smith's right, there is overwhelming support, Rudyard, for the MOU and its various component parts in the broad middle, as you put it. Not only is it supported in the majority nationally, what's really interesting is it has significant majority support in the province of Alberta, and perhaps most interesting, Rudyard, hugely popular amongst self-identified conservatives. As Coletto put it to me on this week's Hub Politics, he can't think of an instance where a liberal prime minister has done something in the past decade or longer that finds even more support from conservatives than self-identified liberals.
I mean, Carney has hit on something. Carney is he's a smart cookie. I mean, first of all, a lot of what his platform is Pierre Poilievre's platform, right? So the conservatives, I think, right now are scrambling. How are they going to differentiate themselves? How are they going to differentiate themselves from the liberals? Because even right now, if you look at polling, the polls show that people prefer Mark Carney as prime minister over Pierre. So how are they going to differentiate themselves? Because they signed the MOU. That's what conservatives want. Sign the pipeline. You saw there 92% of conservatives in Alberta want a pipeline, right? And other things as well. These decreasing size of government. I mean, through attrition and other things, but decreasing size of government. That's a conservative mandate. That's what conservatives want. But you're doing all these, so it's hard for Pierre to differentiate themselves. In fact, it's easier now for the NDP to differentiate themselves from the Liberals. Remember, before it was the NDP who couldn't differentiate themselves. Now they're going to have an easier time differentiating themselves. It's interesting times.
There's something positive here, and whether Mr. Carney stumbled across this or whether this is part of a conscious strategy, we will see. But it suggests that polarization as this meta thesis of all politics everywhere, all the time, may simply not apply to Canada. Yes, on certain issues, you're going to have that gun control. Reproductive rights. The Supreme Court increasingly seems controversial in Canada, but there is a yearning, I see this week in those numbers from David Coletto and elsewhere, that Canadians want to find some middle ground. Maybe we're all burned out, tired of the polarization, tired of the division, tired of the constant fighting and bickering.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. Next year, Rudyard, I'm going to have the honor to deliver the first inaugural Harris Legacy Lecture, where I'll talk a bit about the policy record of Mike Harris and the common sense revolution. And I think it's another example, Rudyard, where there was a silent majority that was broadly in favor of the policy actions that the Harris government was taking, but that silent majority was not reflected in the journalism or the punditry or whatever, that we have succumbed in some ways to the largest, best organized, most galvanized voices, and yet regular people going about living their lives who aren't particularly ideological or particularly partisan want their politicians to be doing things that make sense. They want to be doing things that are pragmatic. They want them to be doing things that advance the country's interests and not are merely responsive to these fringe players. And so in that sense, I think it's to the credit of both Prime Minister Carney and Premier Smith that they made what amounted to a bet that even though they might face some grumblings from their respective base voters, that there existed this broad cross-section of Canadians who would support something like the MOU. And as I say, I think it's a kind of interesting way to think about our politics, and it makes you wonder how many other issues does it apply, where going over our loudest, most activist voices and speaking directly to the median voter is ultimately still the right political strategy.
So that's a good point there by Sean. I think a lot of people may not even have been aware of the MOU, and only really get involved in politics when it's time to vote. When it's time to vote, and people are knocking on their doors, and they just care about what affects them directly. Like, my grocery prices are too high. I can't get quick health care. That kind of thing. But this MOU, I just want to show you what Coletto, if you look at this vote, this poll, it didn't really change things much. Post MOU to from pre MOU, this is December 1, and people, how they intend to vote really hasn't changed. You still get 41% for both liberal and conservatives. So conservatives are actually up a bit. And so it's really no change, no change. NDP still no change all the way around from pre-MOU to post-MOU and how people intend to vote. So, I mean, what this tells me is that yes, the MOU is nice, but right now people just think it's words. It's words on a page, signatures. You got to show me. You got to show me that that this pipeline has actually got shovel in the ground before they're gonna change their vote. So people are still jaded, jaded from what what has happened in the past, and also how is this going to lower my grocery prices? That this is what real people. So I don't know what exactly. Oh, the question was, if an election was held today, which national political party would you vote for? Well, my grocery prices are still too high, so why should I change anything? Right? So the kitchen table issues, as they say, kitchen table issues. This right now hasn't changed any of that, so I'm not changing my vote. It's the same as it was 5 days ago. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, say 3 months from now, when we're actually seeing things happen, hopefully. I've said in the past that I'm giving Carney a year. So a year is April of 2026. And now this is a good segue into what we're going to listen into next. We're going to look into foreign politics, David Cochrane, and see the guys are talking about a possibility of a spring election.
You speculated we could have one in the spring. Am I understanding that right? Like, there's a problem now on Parliament Hill, because I do want to go back to that.
It is.
They lost Elizabeth May's vote for any future things because they immediately sort of broke the deal, right? The NDP, I mean, they stand to potentially gain from pipeline pushback. The Conservatives, we know, and now they're struggling with the Bloc Québécois on the C9 issue about hate speech. I mean, it is very difficult to see partners.
I think there's a real possibility of an election in the spring. They've lost Elizabeth May. They're going to have the NDP will have a new leader. There's no way that a new leader is going to be able to prop up the Liberal government in any kind of form, and for the reason you outlined as well. There is now an opportunity for the NDP to differentiate themselves from this more centrist Carney government, and they have an opportunity to grow seats. The Conservatives have been filibustering and at committee. They've been holding up budget legislation and other pieces of legislation. They are not cooperative at all, and the Bloc can see them, or potentially can see themselves as picking up seats in Quebec. So at some point, I think the Prime Minister is going to have to make a decision and go to the Canadian people and say, I need a majority government. The Conservatives are blocking legislation, and I have an agenda that the opposition parties do not want to support. And I really do think we're probably going to have an election in.
I would agree. What do you two smart people think?
Yeah, I mean that's very possible. He makes some good points there. I believe, yes, the NDP would probably want an election because they can certainly grow from 7 seats and become an official party, and they are also now have a case, as I said before, to differentiate themselves from the Liberals, because the Liberals are now so much less left than the way Trudeau took them. And so, and yes, they can't see themselves really supporting this government based on their mandate, based on what they believe. At least Trudeau, they could, because he had become so left that Jagmeet said, okay, well, we're gonna, stand up with you guys. And that was to his detriment. But now whoever the leader is of the NDP can say no and certainly boost up their base. Now, if the NDP does become strong, that's good for the Conservatives. We need a strong NDP so that people can vote. The strong NDP divides the left. But again, what has Carney done? Carney has got that, he called them the murky middle, the middle, who could go either left or right, and Harper did a good job of making the case for a majority in 2011 when he got it, that he needs one. And if Carney uses the same ploy to say, I need a mandate, I need a majority government, and this may be it. He may do that in the spring.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I have a feeling that the willingness to make compromise is gone on Parliament Hill. And after the budget vote and the way that the Carney government handled its negotiation or talks with opposition parties, there was no talks. Yeah. You take it or leave it. That approach cannot be repeated.
But then what they gave Elizabeth May, they took away with the MOU, right? Like,
exactly.
There's a trust thing there too, right?
Yeah, and it's gone. So, and I don't think that Madame May will again do an about face on the next vote. So I agree with Bob. The scenario of a spring election is getting more and more real to me as a result of the evaporation of the willingness to make compromise on Parliament Hill.
It may also be what the government wants. The government, it may be that they see that this might be their chance to get that majority government and not have to have these kind of negotiations, which clearly this government doesn't want to do, and this prime minister doesn't really want to do anyway. We'll see. I mean, we're going to be hot into the U.S. negotiations on the new CUSMA agreement or in the new year, whether or not there's any kind of deal there. But it might be, and it also, the NDP won't entirely be organized. It will have a new leader, but they might not be totally up and running by then. So the government itself may see that this is, and the Liberals see this is maybe their best chance to try and get them.
A spring election. Wow. But I'm with it. I actually think that's a very good point. I think, like that, what was her name? She said, I think the government does want it. They do want a majority. I mean, who does want a majority? Who's in power? Everyone wants a majority. And that would be a good time to go to the polls. I think Carney does have the cojones to do it and to say, we're going to try for a majority. And I think that's a good time for him to go ahead and do it. I think the NDP wants one as well. They're going to grow from 7 to 24, which is good for them because now they can differentiate. They're totally different. They're totally different from the Carney government. And of course, the Conservatives, we'll see if Pierre does survive the confidence vote in him in January. I think he will survive it, because who else, especially if it's going to be a spring election, then go ahead and survive it, and we'll take you, we'll ride you again, Pierre, into the next election. Remember, Harper won in 2004, 2005. He lost first, and then he won a minority government. So Pierre might win a minority government. He might follow Harper's train to prime minister. He might follow Harper's trail to prime minister. So what do you guys think? What do we talk about? So Rudyard and Sean there were talking about Carney's mojo. Well, Carney really seems to be doing well. The MOU has got broad support from Canadians all over the place, throughout all regions, as we saw there with Coletto. But people still will vote the way they're going to vote according to the poll. People, it doesn't change people's way they're going to vote yet. But and then a spring election is highly possible in Canada. What do you guys think? Leave some comments. It's very interesting. Did you guys watch the FIFA? Watch FIFA? Any soccer, football fans, footy fans in here? Let me know who will you be cheering for in the World Cup? If there's any footy fans. All right, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.